get that stuff off my chest.
All right. Well, let me expand on what we were talking about with A.J. Brown. You think A.J. Brown has a gigantic impact up in New England? And do you think the Eagles miss him and what he brought to that offense? Xander pointed out they were 50-18 in the last 4 years since he's been there. Now he goes up with a better play caller and a better passer of the football in Drake May. I mean, do you think both benefit, or do you think one only benefits?
Well, it's, obviously it's hard to say. I think certainly New England should be better with him on that team. And obviously a key part of it, and this is not to say or to insinuate that A.J. Brown didn't like Nick Sirianni or any of that, but Mike Vrabel's his guy. I mean, and that led to Mike Vrabel's departure from the Titans when they traded him, and Vrabel didn't want that to happen. And the Titans certainly weren't the same team after A.J. Brown left. Not saying that's the only reason, but that certainly was a big one. In terms of the Eagles, well, yeah, I mean, you don't have that guy. And even if he's not having great numbers in a particular season, defenses, when you're on the field, defenses still have to account for you. And now the kid they drafted, Lemon, I mean, he's been hurt here and there, so you don't know what you're going to get out of him as a rookie. So I would think it'll be pretty tough in the passing game for the Eagles, at least immediately, to replace what A.J. Brown was able to do for them.
So let me ask you, as a Hall of Fame voter, you want to get volume. And in the offense that he was in, obviously it's not a high-volume passing attack because the quarterback has been in the bottom 10 pretty much the last 5 years. So when you look at the numbers, he's 118th right now at 8,000 yards. For you, if he wins, does he have to win another Super Bowl? Do you think A.J. Brown, he's working on legacy right now. You know what he's doing. He left 50-18 because he's working on that gold jacket. What would he have to do, in your opinion, for you to consider him to the Hall of Fame in a very crowded room already with players waiting to get in?
Exactly. Very crowded room that only gets more crowded as more guys become eligible. And, I would think he's got to be, he's got to break the 10,000 barrier, which he shouldn't have any problem doing in 2 or 3 seasons, but he's got to be up there in that. But it's tough. It's tough for receivers. I have presented now Torrey Holt 6 different times as a finalist. He's been eligible for 12 years. And his overall numbers, people look at him as, we didn't have a huge, well, he had to retire after 11 seasons because of a knee injury, and that kept his numbers down. But you look at his year by year, his first 8 years were as good as any player in NFL history has had in 8 years, with 2 1,600-yard seasons. And some will say, Dan, and I had to, counter this argument. Well, he had Kurt Warner. Well, he only had Kurt Warner for about 2 or 3 years, right? And then Kurt moved on, and he had Mark Balzer and a history of other, quarterbacks with him. And Balzer was a good NFL quarterback. He wasn't, bottom of the heap, but he wasn't Kurt Warner either. And so you have Holt, and Reggie Wayne of the Colts has also been a finalist 6 times. And it's been tough for them, to break through. So, interesting. Steve Smith Jr., or was he senior? I forget. Junior. Yeah. He was a finalist in 2025 class. And then for this year's class, he didn't even make the finals because Larry Fitzgerald entered. And so, Hines Ward, who might be, he didn't put great numbers in a running offense basically in Pittsburgh, but boy, that guy could block, and he was a team guy, had 1,000 catches. He's never even made the finals. You have Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald's teammate, who was a real balls to the wall receiver. He hasn't been a finalist to this point, being eligible now, I think maybe 4 or 5 years. So like you said, it is tough to break that wide receiver logjam. And so I would say for A.J. Brown, he probably has to get into that, 13,000 yard area to be considered, much less than being talked about, much less actually being elected. And especially if this new process, and we've talked about this several times, if this new process continues, then it'll even be harder for him, because he's not one of those guys, no matter what he does the rest of the way, where you just say, Hall of Famer. Yep, he's a Hall of Famer, which is what basically happened with Larry Fitzgerald. So it's tough. It really is tough. It's tough for everybody. but certainly for wide receivers and how they put up such incredible numbers on a year-to-year basis in the league.
Torrey Holt is a 7-time Pro Bowler. He's on the All-2000s team. He's better than Andre Reed.
Well, and
I think he's a better player than Andre Reed.
I think better than Tim Brown. I mean, you can get some other receivers, and I think what has happened to Wayne and Holt is there's a little bit of Rams and Cardinals fatigue. Well, how many guys on that team, on that offense, should be in the Hall of Fame? And the thing is, it doesn't take.
Plus, Wayne was a 2 behind Marvin Harrison, so maybe that plays something in.
Well, it could have been.
I want him in. He's a Kane, you know that.
But Reggie Wayne was darn good after Harrison retired, and so that was a big thing with it. And some argued that was Torrey Holt. Well, he was a number 2 behind Isaac Bruce. Well, you know what? One of the things that bothers me, if you go back in the day, people should, if you can get your hand on an old media guy, right, old NFL media guys or rosters, and they didn't list pass catchers as WRs for wide receiver. They listed them as SE for split end or FL for flanker. And a split end is on the line. A flanker, of course, is off the line and can go in motion and do all those things. Now they call the wide receiver an X, and the flanker is a Z, right? And the X is a harder position because you're right on the line and you're susceptible to bumps and all that, and you've got to beat the guy. You're not going in motion and get a quick start. And so you never hear that on TV. You never hear that from analysts. So explaining the X and the X and the Z, and then the slot receiver and all those things. And so everyone looks at them all the same. Oh, they're all wide receivers. Well, they're not. They're really not. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think a lot of people aren't totally aware of that. Like I said, so I had to counter that argument. Oh, Torrey Holt was a number 2. Well, he was the X. I mean, they consider the Rams consider them both kind of like 1 and 1A, and that was the reality of it. But like I said, I think that there are some in their mind. We have too many with that team, which to me should never be a consideration. It hurt Jerry Kramer all those years with the Packers. Too many, enough Packers in the Hall of Fame, enough Raiders in the Hall of Fame, enough Steelers. Well, why should that matter? You should judge a player on him, what he did, what he accomplished, and it shouldn't be an X mark or a negative if other great players on the same team are in the Hall of Fame. To me, that should be a non-starter. But with only 50 voters, it doesn't take very many to keep a guy out. And I think I might have to change, assuming he's going to be a finalist in this next vote, I might have to change my strategy in terms of how to talk about him. And I might just say in the meeting, we're not supposed to talk about what's said, but I might just say, I want anyone here to, because no one's ever said it in the meeting. I want someone here to tell me, do you think there's too many Rams offensive players in the Hall of Fame? Who here believes that? And I hope people will tell the truth, because I'm planning to address that when we get down to the nitty gritty in January.
Well, they did it for decades with the Raider players. Why wouldn't they
exactly.
do it with the Raider players?
I mean, look at Donnie Shell, right, for the Steelers, who didn't go into the Hall of Fame until the Centennial class. Look how long it took Cliff Branch in the seniors. He was on the same team as Fred Biletnikoff. And Fred Biletnikoff went in early in his eligibility, and Cliff Branch was hard. I don't even know if he made the finals. And then finally he got in as a senior. I mean, that guy struck fear in the hearts of defensive backs in the NFL. And so that's the thing. And you mentioned Andre Reed. That's what I should look at. That's what I say look at with Reggie Holt and Reggie Wayne, for that matter. All right, look at some of these other receivers, and you're going to tell me that those guys are more deserving than Torrey Holt or Reggie Wayne? Well, if you do, I want to know what you're smoking.
Absolutely.